We are now joined by the Smith County Elections Administrator, Michelle Allcon, ahead of Election Day for the May municipal elections coming up on Saturday. Michelle, thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
So talk about early voting in Smith County with the numbers. We've been reporting on it. What have you seen from your perspective?
We have seen a very low turnout when it comes to the voters. We have just over 1,400 voters that have voted for early voting. That's for 10 separate elections that we're conducting. 70,000 people that are eligible and only 1,400 have voted so far. We are seeing a lot of people coming in interested in voting, but they're not in one of the jurisdictions holding an election, so they're not eligible to vote. So we have been turning some people away, unfortunately, but the people who are actually eligible, we have not had all that many.
During the other interview with you, you called it disappointing. Why do you think it's been disappointing so far?
Well, that's about 1% of the voters. Yeah. So it's a very, very low turnout. That's a very small number of people that are making a decision on who those elected officials are going to be. And that in itself, the proof of voter apathy is disappointing.
And with these local elections, if somebody is thinking about, and they're registered to vote, they're thinking about voting on Saturday and they aren't really sure, why should I go vote? It's just local elections. Why are local elections so important? Because a lot of people say local elections impact you way more, some people say, than presidential elections or more national races. What do you have to say about that? Well,
when it comes to like a presidential election, it's not necessarily based on a popular vote. That's the Electoral College. Mm-hmm. So yes, your voice is definitely important, and it's important in every election. But when you come to those local races, the cities, the schools, the emergency service districts, those are the elections that affect you during your day-to-day life. What are the policies that the school is going to follow? How are they going to spend your tax dollars? Those types of things that affect you here and now versus what might affect you maybe in the long term 10 years down the road, depending on how slow the politics and the political machine moves. Mm-hmm. But those local officials, those elected officials, they have more power and control over what's happening here in this city, what's happening in this school district. And so that's very important to make sure that they are your representative, that you've actually voted for that person or voted against them to say, you know, you don't want that person. So to be able to get out and have that say is really important. It might not be the best thing to say, but if you don't get out and vote, you really have no room to complain if your city council member doesn't do something the way you want them to, if you don't think they're representing you because you didn't bother to actually turn out and vote.
Yeah. So you, I'm guessing, really encourage people to get out and vote, make their voices heard, and just educate themselves on who's on the ballot and just everything else to know about these races.
Yes, and that can be very difficult. Local elections don't have as much
information out there?
Correct. Yes, you don't usually know as much about the candidates. Sometimes they do a good job of letting people know. They have a website, or they come on to talk shows, or they do interviews with media. But other times you don't know anything about them. You see a sign with that candidate's name and that they're representing, running for a city office or a school board, but you don't necessarily know anything about them. And so in that case, all it is name recognition. You walk in, you say, hey, that's that guy or that lady who has that sign out that I'm seeing everywhere.
Right.
And you vote for them just because you see a sign. That doesn't mean that you know anything about them, which is, again, not the best way to make your voice heard, because they could represent something that you are completely against.
Yeah, is that concerning to you?
It's very concerning. Yeah. It's not just on the voter side, but on the candidate side as well. The fact that we don't know anything about the candidates that we're voting for, that we have very little ways to truly research and find out about them. Texas is not great about having information about your candidates easily available.
So national races compared with local races, I think you talked about it a little bit more, but just comparing the two, can you do that
November,
for me?
I believe we had over 100,000 people that turned out to vote out of about 160,000 that were eligible. So we had a good solid turnout there. This one, we have 70,000 people are eligible and 1,400 have voted. So you can see the difference, that It is very stark. The difference between those federal level races versus the city and school races, they don't have the turnout. There are ways to mitigate that, and it is, voter education and those candidates actually getting their name out there and what they stand for, making sure the voters know, there's going to be an election. Voter information just in general. But you also have, there are bills in the current legislative session to move all May elections to November, so that voters, now whether that passes or not, I really don't think it will, but and there's a lot of pros and cons to it. But one of the pros would be that the voters already there to vote for those state level, those federal level races. Yeah. And so those local cities and schools, municipal utility districts, the service districts, all of those other elections would already be on the ballot. So the voters doing everything at the same time. So in some cases that would be very helpful. Voter turnout and voter participation would definitely go up if that was the case. Whether or not the voter knew what they were voting for, that's another question. One of the other things that my office has done, we have an interactive map on our website. So if you go to smith-county.com, currently there's a banner at the top that takes you directly to our current information page. There is an interactive map there where a voter can put their name or their address into the search feature, and they can see if they are eligible for the upcoming election. Okay. It'll actually give them a link to their specific sample ballot. So if they're in the city of Hideaway, it'll give them the link to that sample ballot that will have both the city of Hideaway and the Lindale ISD on that sample ballot. It'll tell them the locations that will be open for Saturday, the hours, which are 7 to 7. Mm-hmm. So all of that information is there, and we have that interactive map available for every election we have. We update it for each election, so that if a voter is interested come the November election to see what their sample ballot is, and they don't know, because we do have a page that's just sample ballots, but they don't know which of those 30 sample ballots is theirs, they can use that interactive map and it's linked directly there tied to their address. So that's a very helpful feature for those people who are walking in, they don't know if they're in a district that's holding an election. Mm-hmm. They can use that search feature on our interactive map. They could also just call our office and ask, and we'll be willing to look them up and tell them.
If school bonds are also on the ballot this year, there's several we've been covering here on the news. If somebody doesn't know about school bonds, what they're trying to accomplish there, what can you tell me about that? And some people always point to the tax raises of a school bond. It might be good for the school, but your taxes are going to go up for a school bond. If people are voting on a school bond, if they go to the poll, what are they looking at?
Well, first of all, Smith County doesn't have any. So it's other areas mm-hmm. in East Texas that might have school bonds. Smith County doesn't have any. But there are a few different things. First of all, contact the school district, because a lot of times the wording on the bond can be in legalese, is what we call it. It's sometimes difficult to understand exactly what it is. Mm-hmm. The school is required to give you unbiased information. They're saying, here's the money we need, here's what it will increase for your taxes, and here's what we plan to use the money for. Mm-hmm. And then it's up to you. Do you think that them increasing the amount of taxes you pay and spending it on these specific items is a good use for your money? A lot of times it's new buildings. Mm-hmm. Buildings do need to be reconstructed or rebuilt. Sometimes you outgrow them. And you just have to consider the fact that, unfortunately, to do that, the school has to have money. How are they getting that money? Is it going to be that they've put aside a little every year to save, or is it because they raise that tax amount? But you have to make that decision yourself. You also have to, do you trust your school board to spend the money in the way that they are claiming they're going to? So you have to be able to have some trust in that school board. And to do that ties back to coming out and voting for them, knowing who they are, having that education or that information based on what they've done in the past, what they have said they've done, have they carried through with that, how open they are to discussing things. All of that ties into it. Do you trust the elected officials? But you really, if you really want to know about the school bonds and things like that, I would start on their website, the school's website, see what information they have, and then contact them if it doesn't have what you're wanting. If you have questions that are not listed there, think through it and actually just ask them. Be honest and say, hey, I saw this bond was on the ballot. I want to know more about it. Here are my questions. Where can I go to find that information?
And with runoff elections, I know you mentioned in Smith County, we're probably not going to see that in this county, but you did mention in the other interview that it might happen in other counties, correct?
Yes,
and how does that process work?
So runoff elections are possible depending on the founding documents of that city, of that municipality. And there are other political subdivisions that could have runoffs as well. In Smith County, I do not believe any of our political subdivisions have the potential for a runoff at this point. However, if you are in a city that, like the city of Tyler, for instance, does have runoffs if they have 3 candidates on the ballot and during the original election, no one candidate gets 50% plus 1 vote. So 50% of the vote plus 1. If they have, if they don't get that percentage, if they got 49% of the votes, then the top 2 candidates go into a runoff.
Okay.
So some cities are set up that way. The city of Tyler is one. However, you have to have 3 candidates on the ballot before that happens. And most of the ballots in Smith County do not have 3 candidates.
Usually 2, right?
A lot of times it's 2. And if you have more than 2 candidates, that's when it depends on how the founding documents are set up for and what type of city and that type of thing. And most of the time I pick up the phone and I say, hey, city of whatever, are y'all a city that has runoffs? And they say yes or no, and that's what I go with because there's no way for me to remember all of them. Again, the city has to let, or the political subdivision has to let our office know that. So for those other cities or political subdivisions that are potential for runoffs, they would be either running them themselves or contracting with their local elections office.
And then for Saturday, how are you personally preparing? Are you expecting, I know you said it hasn't been busy so far when it comes to early voting, but how are you preparing for Saturday, and what are you expecting overall if people are coming to the polls on Saturday in Smith County or maybe across other counties in the area?
Yeah, of course. So we deliver our equipment out on Friday, so we have all of that ready, all of the supplies for the election day polling places. So we'll make sure, we'll double check that all of that's ready to go, that it's all packaged correctly, all the security seals, chain of custody documents, all of that are ready, which they are, but of course you double check it before you load it into a truck. We also will have extra supplies in our office ready if something does occur, that there's a higher turnout at a location than we were expecting. Bullard Southern Baptist Church, for instance, down in Bullard ISD is conducting election. They are not having early voting in their area, but they are having an election day location. So they could get a large turnout on election day. They've had a small turnout for early voting, but because their election day location is right there in the heart of their jurisdiction, they could get a large turnout. This one's also a little bit strange because Bullard ISD extends into Cherokee County.
Right.
So they have contracted, the ISD has contracted with my office to conduct the election for all of their voters, not just the Smith County voters. So in cases like this, the Cherokee County voters will actually be coming to the same place as the Smith County voters.
Interesting.
And they're checking in the same way, they're casting their ballot the same way. There's nothing to differentiate them when it comes to their ballots that will say they're Cherokee County instead of Smith County. It's just all Bullard ISD. So we are expecting a higher turnout for that specific political subdivision because they didn't have an early voting location right there. So we have extra materials for them. We are on standby in case there are any questions or in case even those extras aren't enough. So our office is ready for that. I mean, if things go the same way they did during early voting, we'll be sitting in the office, reading a book, which is not the best way to be spending an election. We want to be answering questions from voters. We want to be helping our election officials. We want to be running out and delivering extra supplies to our locations because that shows that we have a higher turnout than we were expecting. But we'll see which way it goes, if it's going to be sitting there reading a book or actually working.
Yeah, it should be interesting. And then finally, if somebody's going out to the polls on Saturday, what do they need to bring, and what's required for them to bring so they don't get turned away? without not making their voice heard?
Okay, so everybody in Texas to vote needs their photo ID. There are 7 different official types of photo ID that are acceptable in Texas. Those are all on our website. The most common is the Texas driver's license. So you bring in your photo ID, the person checking you in will ask for that. You provide that to them, they verify your information and that you are the person that you say you are. Check you in, and that's all you need. If you have requested a mail ballot and you either haven't received it yet or you haven't mailed it back to us and you're afraid it won't make it to us in time, you can take that mail ballot, if you have it, to the polling place and choose to vote in person instead. If you never receive that mail ballot, what they'll do at the polling place is have you vote a provisional ballot, because we want to make sure that you're not voting twice. So we want to make sure that you didn't say oh, I requested a mail ballot, but I didn't get it, and then you turn around and mail us a mail ballot, and you voted in person. That's illegal. You can only vote once. So we vote you a provisional ballot just to verify that that you don't do that, to make sure that you don't get in trouble for casting a ballot twice. But the only thing you actually need for all your regular voters is that photo ID.
Okay, sounds simple enough. Is there anything else you wanted to add ahead of Election Day that people might need to know?
Just remember that we have 14 locations on Saturday across Smith County. We are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and we have that interactive map on our website. So that's all very useful information for voters to know before they head out to that polling location, to make sure they know where they're going. Say they have their kids are having a soccer game or some type of sports event, or even graduation. That's gonna happen this weekend. Well, on your way back from an event, is there a polling location in that general area? In Smith County, even if you are Winona ISD, if you happen to be down in Bullard, you can vote in Bullard and get your correct ballot. So we want to make sure that that's known to voters so that they know where they can go, what's on their ballot. All of the sample ballots are on our website. So please just look at that information before you come in to vote.
Okay, Michelle, thanks for taking the time to talk with us this morning.
You're welcome.
We certainly appreciate it. Hopefully the weekend will go well for you guys, and hopefully it'll be more busy.
I really hope so. I don't want to be sitting there for 14 hours before the polls open, during and after, just reading a book.
Right. All right, thanks again, Michelle. We appreciate it. And also you can go to KTK.com or Fox51.com for all your election needs.